to another series of lecture brought to you by the LIS 198 class. I'm Bettybell, and today you will learn some issues regarding recognition of digital scholarship and some methods by which digital practices might be valued alongside with traditional. One of the reservations in the field of digital scholarship is that social media activity, for example blogging, is not recognized by the institutions. Yes, it is personally rewarding, but for some who are into pursuing academic career, traditional practice such as getting your articles published in a recognized journal is what you need to get recognition. In this lecture, we will be discussing how digital scholarship might be recognized for tenure and how you can establish a good online identity. The first method is recreating the existing model. What does this recreating the existing model mean in digital scholarship? These terms mean adding in a layer of peer review to blog-like practices or making conventional journals more open. The advantage of this is scholars have provided writing, editing, and reviewing free of charge because it is in open access. However, publishing your article online in a blog-like practice may raise possible issues. For example, you publish it in a blog-like post. The question is, does your article represent your academic institution, or does it separate your formal identity from your online identity? Then, it follow-ups a question of, what will be the impact in academic institution of making your article posted like a blog? But if it will not create issues, then it's totally fine. It is digital equivalence. This second approach emphasizes the key to promotion, which requires the scholar to provide evidence. This means finding quality equivalence in an open, digital network content. For example, a keynote talk at a conference. It is considered as one valid piece of evidence for two reasons. One is reputation, and the next is impact. These two are also criteria for finding online equivalence. Reputation, as it demonstrates that they have gained significant standing in their field. In the impact, for having a significant impact in their subject. The Humane Department at the University of Maine has taken a similar approach of alternative measure. These alternative recognition measures are, first, invited or edited publications. Example of this is an invitation to publish in an online journal. In this case, it is an indication of reputation. Second is live conferences. It can be done both face-to-face or virtual. With this, you'll have an opportunity of a peer-reviewed publication. Third is citations. For citation, it will measure impact. Example of these are publishing your article online, like in a Google Scholars or in a university databases. Next is download or visitor counts. This can be an equivalent to citation. Example are downloaded articles or visit to an academic site. Next is impact in an online discussion. It can be a good ground for media discourse, for example, forums, discussion lists, or a blog. With significant impact and high degree of scrutiny and peer review evaluation. Next is your impact in the real world. In this, it will measure the real-world impact. It might be in the form of newspaper references or Google search. Not native recognition metrics. There is an online measure used here to measure the impact of a scholar. Later, we will discuss more about the matrix. Also, the Faculty of the Humanities at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln have similarly developed a set of specific equivalents for recognition. These are links to the scholar's research, peer review of digital research sites, and technical innovation. Just remember that in finding digital equivalence, two criteria must be present: reputation, and impact. Third is digital scholarship guidelines. Digital scholarship guidelines will help you set out broader criteria for assessing the quality of scholarly activity. Here we will be discussing some guidelines to consider when dealing with digital media in the modern languages. It was developed by the Committee on Information Technology of the Modern Languages Association, or MLA. These are the following. First is delineate and communicate responsibilities. Remember that as a candidate, all your expectations and responsibilities connected with your work and recognition should be clearly delineated and communicated to you at the point of your employment. Of course, for the obvious reason, to avoid conflict in your promotion process. Second, engage qualified reviewers. Consider to have your work evaluated by the persons who are knowledgeable in the field. Review your work in the medium in which it was produced. For example, it was produced online like you have a web page projects. It should be viewed or reviewed online and not in a printed form. It should be reviewed on how you want people to see it. Basically, it's like presenting your work in a real-time base, so your evaluator will see how it will work effectively, especially when it has effects or transitions or voice backgrounds. Last is seek interdisciplinary advice. If you have your work already evaluated by a knowledgeable person, also to consider to seek advice or assistance from experts in other disciplines or other fields to assess and evaluate your work. By this, you will have an idea on how your work affects the other side of your interest. Stay informed about accessibility issue. Always remain informed of new technological innovations that will solve accessibility issues that will allow people, especially persons with disabilities, to conduct research and carry out professionals' responsibilities effectively. The fourth approach is metrics. Here, we use metrics or statistical calculations to measure impact or influence. This measure of impact is often represented by statistical measure such as HIndex. HIndex or HIndex was invented by George Hirsch in 2005. It is a numerical indicator of how productive and influential a researcher is through determining the number of scholar citations. According to Google Scholar Metrics, HIndex of a publication is the largest number H, such that at least H articles in that publication were cited at least H times each. For example, a publication with 5 articles cited by 17, 9, 6, 3, and 2 has HIndex of 3 because of the H core 17, 9, and 6. Let's discuss other approach to citations. First, use data outside the proprietary database as a measure of an article's impact. This webometrics approach was identified to get richer information about the use of an article by analyzing the link to an article, downloads from a server, and citation across the web. Second, broader this webometrics approach to include the more social web 2.0 tools. This includes references to articles and social networks like Twitter and blogs, social bookmarking tools such as Site You Like, and recommendation tools such as Dig. Through this, you can have a good academic discourse about the formal journal. Last, extend metrics to outputs beyond the academic article. As a digital scholar, you are likely to develop an online identity which represents factors of reputation, impact, influence, and productivity. But make sure you carefully establish a representation of scholarly activity by analyzing data from a number of sites. Why? Because it's kind of problematic when people use different tools. It might compromise the standard of the scholarly article. That's the end of the first part of this topic. The remaining methods will be discussed by my partner, Christine.
The next approach in recognizing digital scholarship is the use of peer assessment. When the filter of peer review publication is removed or lowered in significance, in effect, the significance of the peer review in the tenure process increases. Peer review is necessary to determine that the output and activity are indeed scholarly. It is a response to the increased complexity of judging digital scholarship cases. Like for instance, one could have a popular blog in music composition which had no relevance to your position as a biology professor. These professions differ greatly from each other. That's why the MLA guidelines stated earlier recommends using external experts to perform this peer review for tenure committees who may be unfamiliar with both the subject matter and the format. There is obviously an issue going around objectivity with this approach, but as promotion committees seek to deal with a wider range of activity and outputs, judging their impact will need to involve feedback from the community itself. In a part of his paper, Martin Weller suggested that new methods of communication have allowed a finer granularity of research. In effect, the dissemination route had an influence on what could be deemed research. This finer granularity or shift to process away from outputs is another difficulty for recognizing digital scholarship. One approach may be to shift to awarding microcredit for activity. Like for example, a blog post which attracts a number of comments and links can be recognized, but to a lesser degree than a fully peer-reviewed article. In microcredit, finer granularity in the types of evidence produced would allow recognition of not just outputs, but also the type of network behavior, which is crucial to effective digital scholarship. Smith-Romsey stated that perhaps there should be different units of microcredit depending on the type of contribution, from curating content to sustaining the social network to editing and managing the entire communication enterprise of a collaborative scholarly blogging operation. The last of the approaches to recognizing digital scholarship is really a call to encourage new practices which seek to reimagine scholarship. The 7 approaches suggested above can be viewed as a continuum of departure from the conventional model. Much of the attempts to gain recognition for digital scholarship seem to be focused around making it behave like traditional scholarship. For example, permitting Weibo-metric data for journal article analysis is interesting, but it still foregrounds the peer-reviewed article as the main form of evidence. Bending new technology to fit existing practice is a common reaction, partly because we are unaware of its potential. Stephen Heppel declares that we continually make the error of subjugating technology to our present practice rather than allowing it to free us from the tyranny of the past mistakes. In the approach to recognizing digital scholarship, it is often a case of trying to make everything fit into the pre-existing shaped containers rather than exploring new possibilities. Promotion committees can play a significant role in this not only by recognizing new forms of scholarship but also by positively encouraging them either through guidelines or through specific projects. For example, a committee might seek to develop the sort of Web 2.0 metrics mentioned above or to encourage alternatives to the peer review model. In analyzing the peer review process, Fitzpatrick makes a strong case that we need to move beyond merely seeking equivalence measures. He said that, "What I am absolutely not arguing is that we need to ensure that peer-reviewed journals online are considered of equivalent value to peer-reviewed journals in print. In fact, I believe that such an equation is instead part of the problem I am addressing." Fitzpatrick also stated that imposing traditional methods of peer review on digital publishing might help a transition to digital publishing in the short term, enabling more traditionally minded scholars to see electronic and print scholarship as equivalent in value. But it will hobble us in the long term as we employ outdated methods in a public space that operates under radically different systems of authorization. Previously, there has been an agreed set of evidence which could be seen as acting as a proxy for excellence in research. Not only does this list need to be expanded to include digital scholarship outputs, but it may also be that no such definitive list can be provided anymore. The already difficult task of assessing research and scholarly activity in highly specialized fields is only going to be made more difficult by introducing digital scholarship. In recognizing digital scholarship activity in the tenure process, the initial barrier to overcome is that it constitutes valid scholarly activity and is not merely an adjunct to the traditional approaches. And if this obstacle is overcome in an institution, then the next issue is in finding ways of accurately representing it which don't immediately remove the benefits of these approaches or place inappropriate constrictions. Although the main point of this chapter has been the ways in which the tenure process inhibits digital scholarship and the approaches it is beginning to take in recognizing it, the tenure process is not solely to blame for the reluctance of many scholars to engage with the open, digital network approach. So, finally, the most interesting thing in examining the tenure and reward process is that it is yet another example of the unintended consequences of technology adoption. This is what is really fascinating about the open, digital network technologies. Not the technologies themselves, but rather what occurs as a consequence of their uptake by individuals. Thank you.